Welcome to the Beau Show, the home of faith, family, and freedom. For sports fans, Monday night's Bills-Bengals game was a tough one to watch. In the first quarter of the game, Bills safety Damar Hamlin tackled Bengals wide receiver T. Higgins, and presumably the force of the hit into Hamlin's chest triggered sudden cardiac arrest. Hamlin was able to get up after the hit, but then it looked like a lightning bolt hit him as he went motionless and fell backwards to the ground. Players immediately saw the awkwardness and suddenness of this, and they were able to call for medical attention immediately, which was critical. At that time, a wall of people went up around Hamlin, who received CPR for about 9 minutes. The sheer length of time that he was down on the ground being attended to was enough to strike shock and anxiety into everyone both on the field and off. Nevertheless, the players were given 5 minutes to sort of warm up and stay fresh for potential resuming of play, which seemed very out of place considering the gravity of the situation and the fact that Hamlin was being given CPR and not even off the field yet. Hamlin was taken by ambulance to a local hospital in Cincinnati, where he was sedated and is listed in critical condition. Earlier in that same game, a Bills player got hit and stayed face down on the field for a few seconds, which was a terrible foreshadowing of what was to come. The NFL has claimed it has tried to reduce heavy hits by increasing penalties and fines for what is called targeting, or hitting a defenseless player, often helmet to helmet. They said they were trying to reduce the amount of concussions in the violent sport, which can lead to all kinds of health problems well after a player has retired. And while the player's equipment has improved, and helmets are designed better now with concussions in mind, the players themselves have gotten bigger, faster, and stronger than they were in the early days of football. This means that a hit is not just a simple hit anymore. Bodies are much more dense and muscular and powerful. And like I said, just because equipment has advanced doesn't mean that strength, power, and size have not advanced at that pace. As we know from the 2015 Will Smith film Concussion, brain injuries specifically have been a major cause for concern in the game of football. The character Smith plays, Bennett Omalu, tries desperately to inform the NFL of his autopsy findings, but he's shut down and he's dismissed. And this is really at the crux of what happened last Monday that I think that we need to address, which is, how is the National Football League protecting and responding to the violence and injury of the sport? The NFL makes more money than any other sports league, $10 billion in revenue. And as we know, corporate greed becomes a factor. The NFL has transacted major sponsorship deals, and advertising for the Super Bowl has reached an ungodly amount of money. Super Bowl halftime shows have become spectacles, and oftentimes a faux pas, which literally means false step in French. This is one of many reasons why I titled this episode The National Faux Pas League, because they are false stepping a lot these days. And I'll explain why. I've seen the league make mistake after mistake, and unfortunately, commentators on NFL Network, ESPN, Fox Sports, and the like put on their soft gloves when it comes to criticizing the NFL. We saw how the league minimized the findings of CTE brain injuries, so now the league has implemented a concussion protocol situation if a player experiences symptoms of a concussion. Now look, we know that players want to play. They have decided to enter a very violent sport that can cause serious injury or death, but the reward outweighs the risk for them because the compensation is quite high. ESPN's Booger McFarland eloquently spoke about this reward, knowing full well the risk that he took. He said he wanted to be able to take care of his mom, and he did. The shelf life is also quite limited, though, as a season-ending injury can be a career-ending injury, and then that can lead to being cut from teams when there is a new class of healthy young athletes from college ready to enter the draft to replace them. But it has been a sport that has been a national pastime and a catalyst for unity. The games after 9/11 were a great example of that. The National Anthem had been a source of unity until former 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick made it his hill to die on, kneeling during the anthem because of his perception of racial issues in America, especially regarding the police. And that started a wave. The wave got so big that at times teams or players might not even come out on the field when the anthem was played. And that was the first real impression that I had of the NFL being in over its head. Kaepernick went on to call the NFL owners masters and their players mere slaves. He was then paid off by the NFL and went on to make even more millions in a deal with Netflix. That was one of the league's many big mistakes by capitulating to him. And when you see words on the backs of helmets and in the end zones that say "end racism" and "it takes all of us" and catchphrases of that sort, that has been the cumulative effect of bad policy. So now let's return to the Hamlin tragedy. When it happened, Bills coach Sean McDermott had to show leadership, and he did it in a very organic way. He got his team together, he huddled them, and they kneeled to pray. He could see the shock on their faces. And I think at that point, he wasn't thinking about football or the game at hand. He was thinking about Hamlin, his players, how to comfort them, and what the right thing to do would be. The Bengals coach, Zach Taylor, did the same. He came over to talk to McDermott, and we don't know exactly what they said, but it looked like a natural, rational conversation at a very tenuous time. Both head coaches handled the situation with great strength and grace. They showed America what they needed to see. And absent from the entire spectacle was the league itself. While the players were showing care, concern, unity, and prayer, the league was likely scrambling as they worried about losing viewership, advertisements, and money. Because this happened in the first quarter. There were 3 more quarters to play. Instead, commentary was left to the folks on ESPN, such as Joe Buck, Troy Aikman, Booger McFarland, and Adam Schefter in the studio, who all showed aplomb in spite of a shell-shocked situation. No one even knew if Hamlin was alive because there were no reports, and the ambulance seemed to drive off at a snail's pace. The fans in Cincinnati were left totally bereft. It was an hour after all this happened that a statement was issued on the jumbotrons to notify everyone that the game had been postponed. That was a painful amount of time that commentators had to fill in the moment, live. Where was NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell? Isn't it his job to be at this game? There is only one Monday night game, so it's not like he had to pick a particular game. I find it unfathomable that he wouldn't be there. But that unbearable hour of delay was simply unacceptable. Would it have been so hard to go into your studio and issue a video statement? Could you not have joined the broadcast for 10 minutes to issue your statement and express concern and allay people's concerns? That's what leaders do. I mean, when January 6th happened, Trump got blamed for not acting immediately. But he did issue a video telling people to go home peacefully and that there's no place for violence. Sadly, that video got suppressed by Twitter. Trump also had been preemptive by making 20,000 National Guard troops available, which Pelosi and Schumer declined. Goodell was neither prepared nor reactive. Leaders have to lead. And this was a no-brainer. It was the easiest call to make. And it appears that it was only the conference of the coaches that led to the initial postponement, not the NFL, who might have been, counting their shekels regarding ad revenue. They deny this, of course, but it doesn't look good. Safety is always a bigger issue than football. But in this dreadful hour, Goodell and the NFL looked shameful. And this is consistent with other issues that they have faced.